fucking brilliant.
And it surprises a lot of people that laser levels aren't always that accurate, and sometimes they can be knocked out of calibration. So I've got an alternative level for you, which is more accurate than most laser levels, certainly as accurate as anything you can get. It costs £8 and it is 100% reliable, no batteries or anything. Now, you may already have guessed that what we're looking at here is a water level. This technology, if not quite the plastic, goes back to the ancient Greeks, the Romans, the Egyptians. They all used water to level their buildings out in one way or another. Now, this is a very, very convenient thing because not only can it measure levels over long distances, you could do it over half a mile if you wanted to, but also you can measure around corners. Now, laser levels aren't great at measuring around corners, so let's show you how it works. See that once you get the air out of it, just give the hoses a little bit of a shake, make sure there's no trapped air in there, and you can see that the water finds its own level, and that's basically the principle we're working on. So you can see that we've got a perfectly accurate level there, and we can leave one here, fix one on one point, and carry the other one to wherever we want, and it will continue to be level. So if you want 100% accuracy, you're setting out the foundations for an extension or something like that, or even just leveling your garden for a bit of landscaping, you can get them from Faithful, you can get them from a company called Holland, or this one I just got off eBay, unbranded, for £8. 100% reliable, no batteries. With this trusty old Stabilo, you can see that verifies that is running out a little bit, not by a lot. You see, that's not a huge amount on the bubble, is it? But that's enough to drop it by 3 or 4 millimeters over that distance. One tip, by the way, is that if you're using a water level, don't leave half of it lying in the sun and the other half in the shade, because that will give the water a different weight and you will find a discrepancy. So all the water in the level has got to be the same temperature.
Today we're going to be learning how to use a water level. A water level is a very simple tool that's used to measure the differences in height between 2 points, or to see if things are level. A water level is a great alternative to using something like a laser transit, which can cost hundreds of dollars. I built this entire water level for less than $25, and it does the same job. It's not quite as fast and efficient as the laser transit, but the cost savings really makes it worthwhile. A water level is really easy to build. All you have to do is start with an 8-foot piece of 2x2 and cut it exactly in half. Then you attach 2 yardsticks or meter sticks to each post, making sure that they're aligned perfectly with the top and one side of the post. I've then attached a 20-foot length of 1/2-inch tubing to the sides of both posts. The clips here that I'm using you can find in the electrical aisle of Home Depot or Lowe's. Then you fill the tube with water. Now, I've used food coloring in my water, so it's a lot easier to see when you're making a measurement. Filling with water is probably the trickiest part of making a water level, because there's going to be bubbles in the line. So you may end up having to blow into one of the ends to try to push the bubbles out, or you can lower one end down and let some of the water flow out, and that'll get the bubbles out. But it's really the hardest part, and it's not that bad. To use a water level, all you have to do is set one post on the first point that you want to measure, and then the second post on the second point you want to measure. Now, the water level measures the difference between those 2 points. So I can't stress this enough. When I first started using this, I kept trying to see what the reading was exactly, and I was trying to read it like you would measure with the ruler, but really we're looking for the difference. So right now, this post here is at about 20 inches. The water level is about 20 inches. Over here, the water level is at 15 inches. That tells me that there's a 5-inch difference between these 2 points. Okay, for demonstration purposes, I've shoved both of these posts into the ground at different heights. So you can see that one post is definitely higher than the other. And we're going to use the water level to see the difference between the two. As you see here, the water is actually found its level. It's at the same exact point, except the ruler gives you a different reading. So the one on the left reads at about 15 inches, and the one on the right reads at about 21 inches. That tells you there's close to 6 inches difference between the height of these two posts. There are all kinds of uses for a water level on the homestead, and in this case I'm digging the foundation for a cabin that I'm building, and the natural contour of the land is not flat, as in most cases. So there's about a 10-inch difference between the front and the back of where I'm excavating. If I simply dug 2 feet down all the way around, I would end up with that same slope at the bottom of my building, and I don't want that. I want it to be flat and level. When I first started this excavation, I dug a hole right here that was 2 feet deep, and I used the water level to measure it. Over here, this post that's at ground level is reading 35 inches. And over here, you'll notice that the water has leveled out. It's at the same place, but it's at a different reading on the yardstick. It's reading at 11 inches. So the difference between those two is 24 inches, and that tells me that this spot on my left post is 24 inches lower than the spot that's on my right post. So I'm going to use the spot right here on my left post to check for level with the rest of the foundation. I've just finished excavating this portion right here, so I'm going to take a measurement to make sure that the bottom of this is level with that point that we just measured as 2 feet below the surface. So I'm going to keep my post right where our other measurement was, and then I'm going to put this post over here where I've just excavated. And if they're level, the reading will be the same. So it takes just a second for the water to balance out. This is where it's good to have 2 people to do this. What I'm doing today, I can get away with this, but when it's a longer stretch between the posts, then it would really be a lot better if there were 2 people. Okay, so I'm getting 23 inches over here and 22 3/4 over here. Now my range of tolerance is about a 1/2 inch, and I'm within a 1/4 inch, so I'm going to go ahead and go with this. Now that I've dug out even further, I'm going to show you how to make a measurement by yourself when you have to cover a longer distance than your arms will reach. So the first thing I'm going to do is find that initial point that I measured, my starting point, and I'm going to find a point over here that is perfectly level. It's important that it be perfect, not within the range of tolerance, because if it isn't, then that will add up over the number of times you move the level. So I've got 22 and 22, that's perfect. So then I'm going to move over here and measure this new area I've dug out, and if it is even, I am good to go. So in this case, I have 23 and 22 3/4. So that's within my range of tolerance, so I'm good to go here.
It's only tangent at one point on a sphere.
There's a bunch of ways you can use a water level, but they're all based off of the same principle. You've got a bucket of water, and the elevation of that water is the same as filling the room with water, and you're going to measure down from that water line to whatever you want for reference. You can also use it in ways to create benchmarks with your hose. So that's what we're going to do on this wall here. I'm just going to show you how you can really easily mark level on a wall. Now this is a pretty small area, you wouldn't really need it for this, but if you wanted to go all the way around the room, this hose could reach and you could mark a benchmark all the way around the entire room with this method. And I just use a little piece of wood to cork this. Okay, so these are the marks we just drew. There's one here, and I've driven nails into those. And I'm going to show you the level line. But what if you wanted to draw a plumb line? All you have to do is draw a 90-degree line to your line. And you just do that by drawing a couple arcs. In this case, it's about 44.5 inches, 44, a little under 44 actually. So we'll go 23. So those two crosshairs, draw a line through them, and you end up with a plumb line.
And you can do that anywhere you need to.
So this is another way to use a water level where you actually take the level of the water in the reservoir and match the elevation that you want to mark. And you would do this for like a drop ceiling where you have a lot of obstructions and you can't use a laser because it just keeps getting blocked by those obstructions. So you can run around with a hose where you wouldn't be able to see that with the laser. I have found the easiest way to match the elevation is to just clamp your hose. I've got a line right here that represents the elevation I want to hit. And I usually just somehow clamp my hose to where I'm trying to mark it. Take the plug out. I just wait and see how that ends up. In this case, it looks like it's going to be about 3/8 low, 3/8 of an inch low. So what I usually use is some cardstock. This is just some cardboard. And I'm just going to grab what I think is about 3/8 of an inch. And just slide it under my reservoir. And I'll wait for this to settle. And you can see this is sloshing a whole lot, but it still doesn't move a lot in the hose. I think we're good. So now I've got some tape over here that represents the wires that I would mark. So this could be anywhere in the room now. It's as easy as that.
I want to touch on an easy mistake that can be made. I know I've done it before. When you're out in the field and you're measuring pier blocks and you're spot checking each one and trying to get an elevation, sometimes you think the larger number on the ruler is actually the higher location when it's the opposite. So in this case, I've got the story pole sitting on a bucket and it's reading 31. Now I'm going to go to the floor with the story pole, and you can see the water level increases in numeric value, and that's showing the difference between the bucket and the floor, in this case about 13.5. So if the bucket was a pier block and I wanted to go to a lower location and put a leg there, I would cut the leg at 13.5.
This is just a floor plan of the shop, and those red spots are just spot locations that I want to check. So I'm going to run around and do that real quick right now. Okay, so you can see 44 inches was what this measured here, and that's 0. That was the tallest point in the room. This one's 44 3/8. That means it's 3/8 lower than this point. This was 44 1/4. That's a 1/4 inch lower than this point. This one's 44 7/8. That means it's 7/8 lower than that point. You go on all the way down. This one is 1 1/8 lower than that point. So we can tell we've got a pitch from here to here, going down towards the garage door, which is great because if you have to wash your floor out, it goes out the front door. So I'm doing the same thing here. I'm just going to look for the high point and then find all the lower piers and do the math in between to establish the post heights. And you can see here the no post upper right hand corner is set at 0, and that's the highest one. It has the smallest measurement. And the rest of them have larger measurements, the 26 and a 16th on 2 of them and 28 and 5/8 on the lowest. And then I've written down the difference between the 23 1/4 and those measurements inside the pier block locations for the leg heights. So if you want to cut a level area for like a slab or a footing, you would end up using the story pole where you establish a level and then you dig the ground to where that story pole always measures the same. So here I'm just going to cut this little pad, and I established the lowest point, and now I'm just going around to make sure that the measurement stays the same on the story pole at all locations. I like to dig a perimeter and then just kind of carve out the middle part. You take fewer measurements that way. A few more checks here and I'm almost done. There we go. So that pretty pretty much does it for making and the basics of using a water level. The principles that I showed you today can be reused in a lot of different ways. This is a very versatile tool. You'll find that you can use it under crawl spaces, to level foundations, a lot of things beyond what I did today, but using the same principles.
Alright, if you ever wondered how to get the tops of these posts cut off level way up in the air, they're just set in concrete randomly. But if you want to get a level mark up at the top, I use a water level. Now you see this reservoir is full of water now. All the bubbles are gone. And if you look right there, you can see the level of my water. And the level of the water in that tube, even though the tube is running all out through there and around, you got the same amount of pressure pushing both directions. So you can see that that's the level there, that's the level there. So all I gotta do is make a mark now, right here on this column. And then, so it don't really make any difference where you set your reservoir for that first mark. You set your mark, and then if you got a 10-foot stick of pipe that you're going to go up with, and you want to be 15 feet, you measure it from this mark to 5 foot, which will be up here somewhere. You make a mark, and then you tape your 10-foot piece of conduit to the column, and you go up, and that will be 15 feet off the ground, level at the top. It may be like over here, I might be 16 feet from the ground. Over there, I might be 14 feet, but the top measurement is what I'm concerned about. You just want a minimum clearance at the top, and you figure that out first, and then that's what you're going to move from where the reservoir was, and this is my second post, and I've got one marked control. So that's where my line level is. So I'll go ahead and show you on this next one. See where we're dragging our line around. Just drag it right behind you. The only thing is, don't let the end of this hose get down lower than what that reservoir is. If you lose any water out of the hose, you got to start all over again. So when you get where you're going, you got to put this hose up here and hold it where it's running up and down, just straight up and down the whatever you're fixing to mark. And if you'll watch it right there, you can see that it's going up and down. It's equalizing the pressure. See, that's going down. And you got to stop and wait till that is not going up and down anymore. And when you're sure it's not moving, see, it's not moving now. I don't know if you can see it because of the shadow. There it is right there. It's not moving at all. So it's ready to mark.
Hi friends, today we are going to demonstrate a simple application of fluid mechanics, that is level measurement using water tube.
A water level is a device used for matching elevations of locations that are too far apart for a spirit level to span. Here we can see that both the water levels is at the same height. This proves that this is a horizontal surface. The basic principle behind this phenomenon is law of hydrostatics. This shows that the height of the water at both the ends of the tube remains the same. Thus, we can say that the surface we have selected is perfectly horizontal. Next, we move on to an inclined surface. Here we can clearly see that even while the surface is inclined, the endpoints of water
in water tube remain same. This property can be used to find the degree of inclination of the surface, which is primarily employed in the construction sector.
And like I said, I've used water to pretty much level all the foundations or footings or areas, whether it's a swimming pool or a building. I don't have a transit. I kind of like the old school way of doing it, and that's using water level. Now you can do it just with a garden hose, but what makes it really easy is to use two of these. These are Myers water levels. I'll put a link in the description. And you can see the water level here. Obviously water seeks a level, and so this is the easiest way, simplest way to level something. And I would just I'm in my garden, one of my gardens, and I just marked out like a 14 by 12 space. I'm not really building anything here, but I wanted to show you some simple techniques. If you were going to build, pour a slab, pour some footings, a way to get it right on the money. And I just like putting a concrete base to all the buildings. I don't care if it's a root cellar or a building, that you have something to anchor to. I like to use red heads and other concrete anchors so there's no upload. If there is a wind upload and that created, but you're anchored to a lot of concrete. So just building on posts and framing up that way lends itself to a weak structure. So taking the water tubes, the water levels, and once you've got them leveled down here, I'm just going to make a mark. And you always want to pick the lowest. You start at the lowest area, because if I pick the highest area instead of level, I might be too high for this post. So I'm just kind of making a mark on my batter boards here. And again, these have caps on them. And if you're moving around, I recommend that you don't want to, if you lose any water during this whole process, you've thrown off your level and you have to start over. So I cap it, and this has a shut off on it too. So I go ahead and I turn it off. Make sure everything's tight. If you have any leaks in your gaskets, you're gonna have failure too, or your hose. So I've made a mark there, but I'm gonna go ahead and mark these. These are batter boards. I'm gonna actually put some boards to connect up here. I'm just making my water level mark. So I try to keep these together. And what you can do, what you want to do, is you really need another person. You make sure that you keep this water level mark here, and then you need to set this water level mark over here. So it's pretty easy to see with these clear tubing. I'm lining up on my pencil mark there, and I need to line up on my pencil mark here. So if my assistant just hold that tube there, pretty good. And then you got to decide whether you want to read the top of the meniscus or the bottom of the meniscus on the water bubble. So I'm just going to read the top. It's easier for me to see the top than the bottom. So I make my mark, and then again, this will be my calibration mark for everything that I do on this building. Okay, we've put our batter boards up on our four corners, and we started running our mason string. And you can see, I hope you can see on the camera, the water level right here. And it's right on the money with the string. And this corner that we've established, that would be, we could measure from this corner down to a grade stake, and that would be the top of the footing or the top of the monolithic slab, whatever you're pouring, or your concrete block, whatever. The goal of this, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do it, but this is a quick way. You can throw up some batter boards with some scrap lumber, with some mason string and a water level. You can establish. I picked a slope here that's sloping off in two directions, so it's not something you can easily eyeball for level. So you want to use water to do the leveling. And so I got my witness is on that batter board, and then I'm just checking here, so you can see the tube. And if I go down, that one's going to go up. And again, you can see it going up and down. You want to make sure that you give it time to settle out. Once she settles out, you know you're good. If you got really good eyes, you can see, or if it's a small building, you'll be able to see the mark on the other side. So you can kind of get close to where you are. So I can kind of see the meniscus, the water level on the other witness, and I'm right there. So, I mean, with this type of style leveling, you are going to be within a 1/16 of an inch. I just did my generator shed. It was on the money within a 1/16. And so it just makes life easier once you get your foundation right, the way anything is in life, right? Get your foundation correct and you'll be fine as you build. So we're good to go here right now. Again, this was just to show you how to level. I'm going to show you a couple other things that you can use these water levels for. They're great techniques. And so again, this is how you get started to level up a pad or a footing or a block wall using water levels, and they just don't lie. As long as you get the air out of your line, you want to make sure you get all the air out of the hose, and every time you move it, cap it, recap it again, so you don't lose any water. You lose water, you start over. You got air bubbles in it, you start over. So you want to make sure you take your time to make sure the hose is full of water, and every time you move it, because you're going to get up and move and you could throw some water out of the other end, and you've thrown off your calibration. Okay, another great use for the water levels is cutting the tops of posts. Even if it bothers you looking out and you see posts up and down, you want to level out an area, that's a great way to use these. I've got my witness here, my witness post. I'm going to cut two other posts too, and we'll hold that one there, and we'll go over here, uncap, get close to where we need to be. Okay. Make our mark there. We'll cap. And I'll go over to the final post. And a little low over here. Alright. Close? Good. Close enough for fence work. Alright, so we can cap that. I want to make another cut of anything. So, pretty cool to be able to use water to do a lot of different things. So, we'll just, we'll figure out what else we can do with these. But for now,
Well, horizontal
Put those
at
to the
a point would be perpendicular to vertical.
let's
That's
level
right.
out our fence post.
If it is perfectly straight, it is not at a constant elevation.
And that's another great use for the water level. So, all right, I need to level up my gate anyway, and now I have something to go by. I have perfectly level fence posts to adjust my gate. Okay, all right. There's a lot of other things that we could do with this. You could come up with a witness pole. Just say you wanted to level out an area that you were putting in a swimming pool, or you just wanted to level out for anything. You could have a post in these water levels and just make sure that you're good all the way around. Kind of how I believe possibly the Egyptian pyramid in Giza was leveled. I think it's 13 acres plus or minus an inch. How do you do that? Well, they had water from the Nile. They probably could have done it that way. Anyway, that's a side tangent I just went down. But water, it doesn't lie. So it always seeks a level, and it works fantastic for simple construction purposes, farming purposes, just checking. I mean, you could level up fence posts. There's a lot of things you could do. If you had to level a huge area for whatever reason, you wanted to start level, or just to have a nice even grade, then you could use water levels and a pole and go around and make sure, if you're 6 inches here, you got to remove that dirt. If you're low, you got to add dirt. So it's a great way to level up a space, and again, it establishes a good foundation from where you can measure off of and use that as for building everything in your house or your barn or your sheds or whatever you're doing. Sometimes you can just use a level on the long board, but again, the water levels come in handy. You can see that line there where you can make a mark and cut your post. And then if you look over on the other side, we've got our witness and water line there, and that's where it should be cut. And I would say, the levels are going to be more accurate than the water levels are going to be more accurate than using a stick and a level. So it's another good application. Cutting fence posts, pouring your footings, your slabs, cutting off posts that are just out, whether you're building a pole barn or a shed. It can be very handy to have these water levels. They don't cost much, very easy to use, just need a garden hose and 2 water levels.
Perpendiculars to a plane or parallel, yes. Well, we don't see very many humps in the surface of water now, do we?
Now let's go test it out and see if it works on a level surface. And that way you give it what, like a baseline, right? Let's do that. Now let's say we raise this up a little bit, and then you can clearly see how that changes on the water level. So with this resting on the rock, we got 13.5 over here and 14.5 over here, showing that there's a 1-inch difference between these two. This is going to help immensely when I'm trying to level the water tank in a house site. This is going to be super helpful.
Perpendiculars to a plane or parallel, yes.
That will leave me free to go around with the other end and see how much I need to dig to level this out. I got the 2 ends of the water level at 2 different areas. You can see this one over here in the low spot is reading about 17 inches. So you can easily read that in this spot, I'd have to clear about 6.5 inches to get to the level of my first spot. I can just take this around, double check the areas, super quick, super simple.
So when we use these tools that create horizontal lines, at what distance do they start to deviate from horizontal?
Immediately.
At what time does that horizontal line start to deviate and follow the curve?
Doesn't.
Why so serious?